The sound of sobbing carried across the prairie like a wounded animal's cry, and Garrett Vale reined in his horse at the edge of the Pecos River, squinting through the late afternoon sun of 1878 Texas to find its source. A woman sat crumpled on the riverbank, her dark hair hanging loose around her shoulders, her dress torn and dusty. Garrett dismounted slowly, not wanting to startle her, his boots crunching on the dried grass as he approached. She looked up at him with red-rimmed eyes, and even in her distress, he found himself momentarily caught by the intensity of her gaze. "Madam," he said quietly, removing his hat. "Are you hurt?" She wiped at her face with the back of her hand, leaving a streak of dirt across her cheek. "Hurt? I suppose that depends on your definition." Her voice was hoarse, raw from crying. "Physically, I am whole. In every other way that matters, I am broken." Garrett knelt a few feet away from her, giving her space. He was 32 years old, had spent the last 15 years working cattle drives and odd jobs across Texas, and he had seen enough suffering to recognize the bone-deep kind. "What happened?" "Everything," she laughed, but it was a bitter sound. "My husband died 3 weeks ago. Cholera. Then the bank came and took our land because he had borrowed against it to buy seed for planting. I had nowhere to go, so I started walking. I have been walking for days. I thought maybe I would just keep walking until I found somewhere, anywhere, but I realize now there is nowhere for me. I have nothing left." Garrett studied her for a long moment. She was young, probably in her mid-20s, with a face that would have been beautiful if it were not twisted with grief and exhaustion. Something in his chest tightened, an unfamiliar feeling he could not quite name. "You have me," he said. She blinked at him, confusion replacing the despair for just a moment. "What?" "I said you have me. I do not have much. I have got a horse, some money saved up, and a job waiting for me at a ranch outside Amarillo. It is not much, but it is something. And I am offering it to you. You do not even know me. I do not even know you. My name is Garrett Vale. Now you know me." He stood and extended his hand to her. "And I know enough. I know you are in trouble, and I know I cannot just ride away and leave you here." She stared at his outstretched hand as if it were some strange foreign object. "Why would you do this?" "Because somebody helped me once when I needed it, and because it is the right thing to do." After a long moment, she placed her hand in his. Her fingers were cold despite the warmth of the day. "Hannah Turner," she said softly. "My name is Hannah Turner." He pulled her to her feet gently. She swayed slightly, and he realized she was probably half-starved. "When did you last eat?" "Yesterday morning. I had a piece of bread." Garrett walked back to his horse and retrieved his canteen and a bundle wrapped in cloth. He handed her the canteen first. "Drink slowly," he said, then unwrapped the cloth to reveal some dried beef and hardtack. "It is not fancy, but it will fill your stomach." Hannah drank carefully, then took the food he offered. She ate slowly at first, then faster as her hunger overtook her manners. Garrett looked away, giving her some privacy, studying the landscape instead. The Pecos River flowed sluggishly beside them, its water brown and low from the summer heat. In the distance, the prairie stretched endlessly, broken only by occasional clusters of mesquite and cactus. "Thank you," Hannah said finally, her voice stronger now. "I do not understand why you are helping me, but thank you. You can ride with me to Amarillo. It is about 3 days from here. The ranch I am going to work at, the owner is a decent man named Samuel Green. He might have worked for you too, or at least know someone who does. Women can always find work cooking or cleaning." Hannah's jaw tightened slightly. "I am not afraid of work. I have been working since I could walk. My husband and I, we built our farm from nothing." Her voice caught. "And now it is all gone. I am sorry for your loss. Are you?" She looked at him directly, challenging. "Or are you just saying what you think you should say?" Garrett met her gaze steadily. I lost my parents when I was 17. Comanche raid. I know what it feels like to have everything torn away in an instant. So yes, I am sorry, I mean it. Something in Hannah's expression softened. I apologize, I should not have questioned you, not after you have been so kind. You do not need to apologize, you have been through hell. You are allowed to be angry. They stood in silence for a moment, the only sound the gentle rush of the river and the occasional call of a bird. Finally, Garrett said, "We should get moving. I want to cover some ground before dark." "Can you ride?" "I used to. It has been a while." "You will ride with me then. My horse can handle two for a while." He helped her mount first, then swung up behind her. She stiffened at the closeness, and he was careful to keep as much distance as he could while still being able to hold the reins. They rode in silence for the first hour, heading northwest toward Amarillo. The sun began its descent toward the horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. "Why were you out here alone?" Hannah asked finally. "Where were you coming from?" "San Angelo." "I was working on a ranch there, but the owner died and his son wanted to sell. I heard about work at the Green Ranch, so I am heading there." "You always drift from place to place?" "For the last 15 years, yes. After my parents died, I could not stay at our farm. Too many memories. So I started moving and I just never stopped." "That sounds lonely." Garrett considered this. "I suppose it is, but it is also simple. No ties, no obligations, no one to disappoint." "Everyone has ties," Hannah said. "Whether they want them or not, we are all connected to something." "What about you? Did you have family besides your husband?" "My parents died when I was 16. Yellow fever." "My husband, James, he was a neighbor. We married the next year. I thought I had found stability, a home. I was wrong." As the sun set, Garrett found a suitable place to make camp, a small clearing near a creek with some cottonwood trees for shelter. He helped Hannah down from the horse, noticing how she winced when her feet hit the ground. "Your shoes are worn through," he observed, seeing the holes in the leather. "I know, but I do not have another pair." Garrett unsaddled his horse and got a fire started while Hannah sat on a fallen log, watching him work. When the flames were crackling steadily, he sat across from her and pulled out the last of his provisions to share. "Tomorrow we will reach a small settlement," he said. "We can get you some proper shoes and more food." "I do not have any money." "I do, it is fine." "I cannot just take your money." "You are not taking it, I am giving it. There is a difference." Hannah looked down at her hands, folded in her lap. In the firelight, Garrett could see the tears threatening to spill over again. "I do not know how to accept help," she whispered. "James and I, we were so proud of doing everything ourselves. We did not want charity, and now look at me. I am completely dependent on a stranger's kindness." "There is no shame in needing help, Hannah. Life knocks us all down sometimes. The only shame is in not getting back up." She looked at him across the fire, really looked at him, and Garrett felt something shift between them. It was subtle, like the first breath of wind before a storm, but it was there. "You are a good man, Garrett Vale." "I am just a man. Good is a matter of opinion." They talked late into the night, sharing stories of their lives before this moment. Hannah told him about her childhood, about learning to read from a traveling teacher who stayed in her town for one summer, about the small moments of joy she had found in her marriage despite the hardship. Garrett told her about growing up on a farm, about his father teaching him to rope and ride, about the guilt he still carried for not being there when the Comanche came. When the fire died down to embers, Garrett spread out his bedroll for Hannah and used his saddle as a pillow for himself, wrapping up in a spare blanket. "Garrett," Hannah's voice came softly through the darkness. "Yes, thank you for everything. Get some sleep, Hannah. Tomorrow is a new day." They reached the settlement of Sweet Water the next afternoon. It was barely a town, Just a general store, a saloon, and a few scattered houses, but it had what they needed. Garrett bought Hannah a sturdy pair of boots, a new dress to replace her torn one, and stocked up on supplies for the rest of the journey. The woman running the general store, a weathered lady named Mrs. Patterson, took Hannah into the back room to change. When Hannah emerged in the new dress, a simple calico pattern in blue and white, Garrett felt his breath catch. With her hair brushed and her face clean, she was stunning. "It fits well," Hannah said, looking down at herself self-consciously. "Thank you, Mrs." Patterson looked between them with knowing eyes. "You two newly married?" "No," Garrett and Hannah said simultaneously. The old woman raised an eyebrow. "Just traveling together then?" "I am helping Mrs. Turner get to Amarillo," Garrett explained. "Her husband recently passed, Mrs." Patterson's expression softened with sympathy. "I am sorry for your loss, dear, but you are lucky to have such a gentleman helping you." She turned to Garrett. "You be careful on the road. There has been trouble lately with a gang operating between here and Amarillo. They have been robbing travelers." "I will keep watch," Garrett promised. They left Sweetwater late that afternoon, both riding now since Garrett had managed to trade for an old mare, gentle and steady despite her age. Hannah took to riding again quickly, her body remembering the rhythm even after years away from it. As they rode, Garrett found himself watching Hannah more than he should. The way she sat straight in the saddle despite her exhaustion, the way she looked out at the landscape with something like hunger, as if she were trying to memorize every detail. She caught him looking once and gave him a small smile, and he felt something warm unfold in his chest. They made camp that night near a cluster of rocks that provided some shelter from the wind. After they ate, Hannah surprised him by asking, "Will you tell me more about your parents?" "If it is not too painful." Garrett poked at the fire with a stick, sending sparks dancing into the night sky. "My father was a hard man, but fair. He taught me everything I know about horses and cattle. My mother was gentler. She used to sing while she worked, old songs from back east." They loved each other fiercely. You could see it in the way they looked at each other, even after 20 years of marriage. "That is beautiful. James and I, we cared for each other, but it was not like that. Our marriage was more practical than passionate. We were friends who built a life together." She paused. "I think maybe I always wanted what your parents had, that kind of deep love. It is rare, I think. Most people settle." "Is that what you will do, settle?" Garrett looked at her across the fire. "I never thought I would marry at all. Did not seem fair to tie someone to a drifter with no roots. Maybe you have not found the right reason to put down roots yet." Their eyes held for a long moment before Garrett looked away, his heart beating faster than it should. He barely knew this woman. It was absurd to feel this pull toward her, this desire to know everything about her, to make her smile, to protect her from any more hurt. But he did feel it, whether it made sense or not. The next day brought trouble, just as Mrs. Patterson had warned. They were crossing a narrow canyon when 3 men appeared, blocking the path ahead. Garrett's hand moved instinctively toward his gun, but he forced himself to remain calm. "Well, what do we have here?" The man in the center was tall and lean, with a scar running down his left cheek. "A cowboy and his lady friend. You folks look like you might have something worth sharing." "We do not want trouble," Garrett said evenly. "We are just passing through." "That is too bad, because trouble found you anyway. Now why do not you hand over your money and supplies, and maybe we will let you go without too much fuss." Garrett could feel Hannah tense beside him. He calculated the odds quickly. 3 against 1, and he had Hannah to protect. Fighting was a risk, but giving up everything they had would leave them stranded. "Listen," Garrett said, trying to buy time. "The lady just lost her husband. We barely have enough to make it to Amarillo. Surely you can let us pass." The scarred man laughed. Ain't that touching? You hear that, boys? A sob story. His expression hardened. Hand it over. Now. What happened next occurred in seconds. One of the other men moved forward to grab Hannah's horse, and she reacted instinctively, kicking out and catching him in the chest. He stumbled backward with a curse, and Garrett took advantage of the distraction to draw his gun. "Back away," Garrett commanded, his voice cold and steady. "All of you." The scarred man's hand hovered over his own gun. "You gonna shoot all three of us before one of us gets you? Maybe not. But I will definitely get you first. That is a promise." They stood in tense silence, the only sound the nervous shuffling of the horses. Then, from behind the outlaws, another voice rang out. "I would do what he says, gentlemen." Everyone turned to see a man on horseback emerging from behind a rock formation. He was older, probably in his 50s, with gray hair and a marshal's badge pinned to his vest. The scarred man cursed and raised his hands. His companions followed suit. The marshal rode forward, his own gun drawn, and Garrett felt the tension drain from his shoulders. "Garrett Vale," the marshal said, studying him. "Samuel Green sent word you were coming. He asked me to watch for you on the road. You know Samuel, old friends. He mentioned you would be bringing a lady with you, though he was not clear on the details." The marshal turned his attention to the outlaws. "You three are coming with me. There is a price on your heads." As the marshal rounded up the outlaws, Garrett and Hannah sat in stunned silence. Finally, Hannah let out a shaky breath. "That was terrifying." "You did well," Garrett said. "That kick bought us the time we needed. I was not thinking, I just reacted. Sometimes that is the best thing to do." The marshal finished tying up the outlaws and rode over to them. "Name is Frederick Walsh. You two should ride with me for the rest of the way to Amarillo. It is safer." "We appreciate that," Garrett said. As they rode, Marshal Walsh told them about the recent troubles in the area. The gang they had encountered was part of a larger group that had been terrorizing travelers for months. "Things are changing out here," he said. "Not as wild as it used to be, but still dangerous. Amarillo is growing, though, getting more civilized every year. Got a proper sheriff now, a school, even talk of bringing in a railroad in the next few years." "Sounds like progress," Garrett said. "For better or worse. Some of us old-timers miss the open range, but I suppose change is inevitable." They reached Amarillo late the following afternoon. The town was larger than Garrett remembered from his last visit 5 years ago, with a main street lined with businesses and houses spreading out in all directions. The marshal directed them to the sheriff's office first, where he deposited his prisoners, then offered to take them to the hotel. "I need to get out to the Green Ranch," Garrett said. "Let them know I am here. It is late. Why do not you get settled for the night? Samuel is not expecting you until tomorrow anyway." Marshal Walsh looked at Hannah with kind eyes. "And the lady looks like she could use a proper bed and a hot meal." Garrett glanced at Hannah, seeing the exhaustion in every line of her body. "You are right, Hannah. A bed sounds like heaven," she admitted. The marshal helped them secure rooms at the Amarillo Hotel, a modest but clean establishment on the main street. Garrett paid for 2 rooms, and as the clerk handed them the keys, Hannah touched his arm gently. "I will pay you back," she said quietly. "Somehow. I will find work and I will pay back every cent. We can talk about that later. Right now, you need to rest." They parted at their respective doors, and Garrett found himself reluctant to let her go, even though she would be just across the hall. He had known her for only 4 days, but it felt like longer. It felt like she had always been there, a missing piece he had not known he was looking for. The next morning, Garrett met Hannah for breakfast in the hotel's dining room. She looked better after a night's rest. Some of the color returned to her cheeks. "I have been thinking," she said after they had ordered. When we get to the Green Ranch, you should not feel obligated to help me anymore. You have already done so much. I can find my own way from here. Do you want me to stop helping you? Hannah looked down at her hands. No, but I do not want to be a burden either. You are not a burden, Hannah. In fact, I was hoping we could continue on together, at least until you are settled. Why? It was a simple question, but the answer was complicated. Garrett searched for the right words. Because in 4 days, you have become important to me. I know that sounds strange, but it is the truth. I want to make sure you are all right. Hannah's eyes met his, and he saw something shift in them, a softening, a letting down of walls. You have become important to me too, she whispered. That terrifies me. Why does it terrify you? Because I just lost everything. I am not ready to care about someone again. I am not ready to risk more loss. Garrett reached across the table and gently took her hand. I understand, but maybe caring about someone is not about being ready. Maybe it just happens whether we want it to or not. Their breakfast arrived, interrupting the moment, but Garrett did not let go of her hand right away. When he finally did, he could still feel the warmth of her skin against his palm. After breakfast, they rode out to the Green Ranch, located about an hour outside of Amarillo. The ranch was sprawling with a main house, several outbuildings and corrals full of horses. Samuel Green himself came out to greet them, a barrel-chested man with a booming laugh and a firm handshake. Garrett Vale, Marshal Walsh sent word you had arrived. I was expecting you this morning. His eyes moved to Hannah with curiosity. And you brought a companion. Garrett explained the situation as briefly as possible, and Samuel listened with a thoughtful expression. When Garrett finished, Samuel nodded slowly. Well, Mrs. Turner, you are welcome here as long as you need to stay. My wife, Dorothy, could use help around the house. She has been wanting to hire someone for months now. Room and board plus wages. How does that sound? Hannah's eyes widened. That is incredibly generous. Are you certain? Certain as sunrise. Dorothy is inside. Let me introduce you. Dorothy Green turned out to be a warm, bustling woman in her late 40s with graying hair and a ready smile. She took to Hannah immediately, showing her around the house and chattering about all the work that needed doing. Garrett watched Hannah relax incrementally, saw the tension leave her shoulders as Dorothy made her feel welcome. Samuel showed Garrett to the bunkhouse where the ranch hand stayed. There were 6 other men working the ranch, all of them friendly enough. Garrett would be working with the horses primarily, breaking and training the new stock. Over the following weeks, Garrett fell into the rhythm of ranch life. He worked long days with the horses, coming back to the bunkhouse at night tired but satisfied. And every evening he found excuses to stop by the main house, ostensibly to report to Samuel but really to see Hannah. She was thriving under Dorothy's care. The haunted look had faded from her eyes, replaced by something lighter. She smiled more, laughed occasionally at Dorothy's stories. And whenever Garrett appeared, her whole face would brighten in a way that made his heart race. They fell into their own rhythm too. After dinner, when the work was done, they would walk together around the ranch, talking about everything and nothing. Hannah told him about her dreams for the future, about maybe having her own business someday, a bakery perhaps. Garrett told her about the places he had been, the things he had seen in his years of drifting. One evening, about a month after their arrival, they walked down to the creek that ran through the Green property. The sun was setting, painting the sky in brilliant colors, and Hannah sat down on the bank, dangling her feet in the cool water. I keep waiting for something to go wrong, she said suddenly. I keep waiting for this all to fall apart like everything else has. Garrett sat beside her. Why do you think it will fall apart? Because happiness does not last, not for me. Maybe your luck has changed. Hannah turned to look at him, her eyes searching his face. What are we doing, Garrett? What do you mean, these walks, these talks, the way you look at me? Her voice was soft but steady. I see it, I feel it, but I do not know what it means. Garrett's heart pounded in his chest. This was the moment. He could deflect, play it safe, or he could tell her the truth. It means I care about you, Hannah, more than I have ever cared about anyone. It means I think about you constantly. It means when I imagine my future, you are in it. We barely know each other. I know enough. I know you are strong and brave and kind. I know you make me want to stop drifting and build something real. I know that when you smile, it feels like the sun coming out after a storm. Tears welled in Hannah's eyes, but they were different from the ones he had seen that first day by the river. These were not tears of despair. I am afraid, she whispered. I am afraid to feel this way so soon after losing James. I am afraid of what people will think. I am afraid of getting hurt again. I am afraid too, Garrett admitted, but I would rather be afraid with you than safe without you. Hannah reached out and took his hand, lacing her fingers through his. They sat like that as the sun set completely, the stars beginning to emerge overhead. Finally, she said, I care about you two, so much it scares me. Then be scared with me. She laughed, a sound that was half sob, and leaned her head against his shoulder. Garrett wrapped his arm around her, holding her close, and felt something settle deep in his soul. This was right. She was right. They took things slowly after that, both of them aware of the fragility of what they were building. But as summer turned to fall, their relationship deepened. Garrett had never been a romantic man, but he found himself wanting to do things for Hannah, wanting to make her happy in small ways. He brought her wildflowers from the prairie. He fixed the squeaky hinge on her bedroom door without being asked. He listened when she needed to talk about James, about her grief, never jealous of the love she had for her late husband, understanding that she could honor that past while building a new future. Hannah, for her part, showed her care in equally quiet ways. She mended his torn shirts. She saved him the best pieces of pie at dinner. She asked about his day and actually listened to the answers. And slowly, so slowly Garrett almost did not notice it happening, she opened up completely, letting him see all of her, the good and the painful, the hopes and the fears. One Saturday in October, Samuel announced he was throwing a harvest dance at the ranch. The whole town was invited, and Dorothy threw herself into the preparations with enthusiasm. Hannah helped with the cooking and decorating, and Garrett found himself roped into moving tables and chairs. The night of the dance, Garrett stood at the edge of the barn, watching as people arrived. Musicians set up in the corner, and soon the sound of fiddles and guitars filled the air. Garrett was not much of a dancer, but when Hannah emerged from the house in a new dress Dorothy had made for her, a deep green that brought out the color of her eyes, he knew he would dance every dance if she asked. "You look beautiful," he said as she approached. She blushed, pleasure evident on her face. "Thank you. You clean up pretty well yourself." He did dance with her, every dance, not caring what anyone thought. They two-stepped and waltzed, laughing when he stepped on her toes, holding each other close when the music slowed. Other people watched them with knowing smiles, and Garrett realized that everyone on the ranch had figured out what was happening between them long before they had admitted it to themselves. During a break in the music, Samuel called for everyone's attention. "I just want to thank you all for coming tonight. It has been a good year, and I am grateful for all of you. To friends, to family, and to new beginnings." He raised his glass and everyone cheered. Later, as the party was winding down, Garrett and Hannah slipped outside for some air. The night was cool and clear, the stars brilliant overhead. They walked away from the noise of the party, finding a quiet spot near the corral. "I have been thinking," Garrett said, his heart hammering with nervousness. "About the future." "What about it?" He turned to face her fully, taking both of her hands in his. I want to build something permanent, here in Amarillo. Samuel has offered to let me buy into the ranch as a partner if I am interested. It would mean staying put, putting down roots. That is wonderful, Garrett. I know how much you have enjoyed working here. I want to build a house, a real home, and I want you in it, Hannah. As my wife, if you will have me. Hannah's breath caught. Are you asking me to marry you? I am. I know it has not been very long. I know people might talk because your husband has only been gone 6 months. But I love you, Hannah. I think I started loving you that first day by the river when you were at your lowest and you still had the strength to be angry. You are the strongest person I know, and the kindest and the most beautiful inside and out. I want to spend the rest of my life making you happy. So yes, I am asking you to marry me. Tears streamed down Hannah's face, and for a moment Garrett feared he had pushed too hard, moved too fast. But then she was nodding, a smile breaking through the tears. Yes, she said. Yes, I will marry you. Relief and joy flooded through Garrett in equal measure. He pulled her close and kissed her for the first time, a gentle, reverent kiss that quickly deepened as she responded. When they finally pulled apart, both breathless, Hannah laughed. I never thought I would feel this way again, she said. I never thought I would want to feel this way again. But you changed everything, Garrett. You gave me hope when I had none. You gave me yourself when I had nothing. You have never had nothing, Garrett said, cupping her face in his hands. Even at your lowest, you had your strength, your dignity, your heart. I just want to be worthy of that heart. You already are. They announced their engagement the next day, and while a few people in town raised eyebrows at the timing, most were genuinely happy for them. Dorothy cried and hugged them both. Samuel clapped Garrett on the back and said he had never seen a man so clearly in love. They married in December, a small ceremony in the Amarillo church with Marshall Walsh standing up for Garrett and Dorothy for Hannah. Hannah wore a simple white dress, and when Garrett saw her walking down the aisle toward him, he felt his eyes burn with unshed tears. This woman, this incredible woman, had chosen him, had chosen to build a new life with him. The preacher spoke about love and commitment, about the sacred bond of marriage. But Garrett barely heard the words. He was too focused on Hannah, on the way she looked at him with such trust and love, on the feel of her hand in his as they exchanged vows. I promise to honor you and cherish you all the days of my life, Garrett said, his voice rough with emotion. I promise to be your partner in all things, to support your dreams, to comfort you in sorrow and celebrate with you in joy. I promise to love you fiercely and without reservation from this day forward. Hannah's own vows were equally heartfelt. You found me when I was lost and gave me a reason to keep going. I promise to be worthy of that gift. I promise to love you with everything I am, to build a life with you that honors both our pasts and our future. I promise to be your home as you are mine. When the preacher pronounced them husband and wife, Garrett kissed her deeply, not caring that they had an audience. She was his. He was hers. Nothing else mattered. They had a reception at the Green Ranch, where Dorothy had prepared a feast despite the winter cold. People danced and ate and celebrated until late into the night. But Garrett and Hannah left early, eager to begin their life together. Samuel had given them a small house on the edge of the ranch property as a wedding gift. It was modest but well built, with 2 bedrooms, a kitchen, and a main room with a fireplace. Garrett carried Hannah over the threshold, both of them laughing, and set her down gently in their new home. "Welcome home, Mrs. Vale," he said softly. "Home," Hannah repeated, wonder in her voice. "I thought I would never have one again. You will always have one. With me." That night, they consummated their marriage with tenderness and passion, learning each other's bodies, expressing physically what words could not fully capture. Afterward, they lay tangled together in their bed, Hannah's head on Garrett's chest, his hand stroking her hair. "Are you happy?" Garrett asked. "Happier than I ever imagined I could be. You, beyond words." They fell into married life with ease, as if they had been together for years instead of months. Garrett took on more responsibility at the ranch, working closely with Samuel to expand the horse breeding program. Hannah continued to work for Dorothy, but also began experimenting with baking, perfecting recipes for pies and breads and cakes. Samuel suggested she sell her baked goods in town, and soon Hannah had a small but steady income from her creations. Their first spring together brought new life to the ranch. The horses foaled, the cattle calved, and the prairie burst into bloom with wildflowers. It also brought news that surprised them both. Hannah was pregnant. They discovered it in late April when Hannah could not keep her breakfast down for the third morning in a row. Dorothy, who had 5 children of her own, took one look at Hannah's pale face and knew immediately. "You are with child," she said matter-of-factly. Hannah's hand went instinctively to her stomach. "I think I might be." The doctor confirmed it later that week. Hannah was about 2 months along, which meant the baby would arrive in late November or early December. Garrett's reaction when she told him was everything Hannah could have hoped for. His face went through a series of expressions: shock, wonder, joy, landing finally on fierce protectiveness. "Are you all right?" he asked, taking her hands. "How do you feel? Sick in the mornings, but otherwise well." "Garrett, we are going to have a baby." "A baby," he repeated, as if testing out the word. Then he was picking her up and spinning her around, both of them laughing. When he set her down, his hand went to her belly, still flat but holding their future. "I am going to be a father. You are going to be a wonderful father." As summer progressed and Hannah's belly grew, Garrett became almost comically protective. He did not want her lifting anything heavy, riding horses, or working too hard. Hannah tolerated his fussing with good humor, understanding it came from love, but she also insisted on maintaining her independence. "I am pregnant, not fragile," she told him one evening when he tried to take a basket of laundry from her. "Women have been having babies since the beginning of time while still doing their work. I know. I just want you and the baby to be safe. We are safe. We have you." They spent the long summer evenings planning for the baby's arrival. Garrett built a cradle from oak, sanding it until it was smooth as silk. Hannah sewed tiny clothes and blankets. They debated names endlessly, settling finally on Matthew if it was a boy, Rose if it was a girl. In late July, a letter arrived from Hannah's cousin in Kansas, someone she had not heard from in years. The cousin had somehow tracked her down and wrote expressing condolences about James and asking after Hannah's well-being. Hannah wrote back, telling her about Garrett, about the baby, about her new life in Amarillo. "Does it feel strange?" Garrett asked as she sealed the letter. "Writing about this life we have built, strange in a good way. A year ago I was at my lowest point, crying by a river, ready to give up. Now I am married to a man I love beyond measure, carrying his child, building a future I could not have imagined. It feels like a miracle." "You are the miracle," Garrett said, pulling her close despite the awkwardness of her growing belly between them. "You and this baby." Labor came on a cold December morning, 2 weeks past when the doctor had expected. Garrett had gone out early to check on the horses, and when he returned to the house, he found Hannah gripping the kitchen table, her face tight with pain. "The baby," she gasped. "It is time." Garrett's training from years of helping with difficult births in cattle and horses kicked in, overriding his panic. He got Hannah to bed, sent one of the ranch hands for the doctor and Dorothy, and held Hannah's hand as the contractions grew stronger and closer together. The doctor arrived within the hour, Dorothy right behind him. They took over with calm efficiency, and Garrett found himself relegated to pacing in the main room, listening to Hannah's cries and feeling utterly helpless. Samuel showed up at some point, sitting with Garrett in silent support. "First baby is always the hardest," he said. "On the father especially, but Hannah is strong. She will be all right." The labor lasted through the morning and into the afternoon. Just when Garrett thought he could not stand another minute of waiting, of hearing Hannah's pain, a new sound filled the house. A baby's cry, strong and outraged. Dorothy appeared in the doorway, her face flushed but smiling. "You have a son," she announced. "A healthy, beautiful son." And Hannah did wonderfully. Garrett nearly collapsed with relief. "Can I see them? Give the doctor a few more minutes. He is making sure everything is settled." When Garrett was finally allowed into the bedroom, he found Hannah propped up on pillows, exhausted but radiant, holding a tiny bundle wrapped in a blue blanket. She looked up as he entered, and the smile she gave him was luminous. "Come meet your son," she said softly. Garrett approached slowly, almost afraid to breathe. Hannah pulled back the blanket to reveal a tiny red face, eyes squeezed shut, a shock of dark hair on his head. The baby was perfect, impossibly small and perfect. "Can I hold him?" Garrett asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Hannah carefully transferred the baby into his arms, and Garrett felt his entire world shift. This tiny person, this piece of him, and Hannah was depending on him, trusting him. It was terrifying and wonderful in equal measure. "Hello, Matthew," Garrett said, blinking back tears. "Welcome to the world." The baby yawned, a tiny squeaking sound, and Garrett laughed through his tears. He looked at Hannah and found her crying too, happy tears that matched his own. "We made him," Hannah said wonderingly. "We made this perfect little person. You did all the hard work. We did it together. Everything we have, we built together." Garrett carefully returned Matthew to Hannah's arms and sat on the edge of the bed, his arm around his wife, looking down at their son. "I love you," he told Hannah. "More than I knew it was possible to love someone. I love you too. Thank you for finding me. Thank you for not riding away that day by the river. Thank you for taking my hand, for trusting me when you had no reason to." They sat together as the winter afternoon faded into evening, their small family complete, both of them marveling at the journey that had brought them here. From despair to hope, from strangers to soulmates, from nothing to everything. Matthew proved to be a relatively easy baby, sleeping well and eating enthusiastically. Hannah recovered from the birth quickly, and by February she was back to her normal activities, though Garrett still tried to do more than his share of the work to give her time with the baby. Life settled into a new rhythm. Garrett would wake early to do his work at the ranch, come home for lunch to see Hannah and Matthew, then return to work until dinner. Evenings were spent as a family, with Matthew often falling asleep in his father's arms as Garrett rocked him by the fireplace. Samuel officially made Garrett a partner in the ranch that spring, drawing up papers that gave Garrett a percentage of the profits and a say in all major decisions. It was more than Garrett had ever dreamed of, a tangible sign that his drifting days were truly over. He had roots now, deep ones, anchored by Hannah and Matthew and the life they were building. Hannah's baking business continued to grow. She was supplying 3 different stores in Amarillo now, and there was talk of opening her own shop eventually. Garrett encouraged her dreams, taking care of Matthew whenever she needed to work, never complaining about the early mornings when she had to start baking or the late nights when she was perfecting a new recipe. On their first wedding anniversary, Garrett gave Hannah a deed to 10 acres of land on the main street of Amarillo, prime real estate for her future bakery. She cried when she opened the envelope, overcome by his faith in her dreams. "I cannot accept this," she said, even as she clutched the deed to her chest. "It is too much. It is not nearly enough. You deserve this, Hannah. You deserve everything." "I already have everything. I have you and Matthew. That is all I need." "Then consider this a bonus. Something to build on for our future." Matthew grew from an infant into a chubby, curious baby who started crawling in the summer and took his first steps just before his first birthday. He had Hannah's eyes and Garrett's stubborn chin, and he ruled their household with baby fists and toothless grins. As Matthew became more mobile, Garrett baby-proofed everything he could think of, much to Hannah's amusement. "You cannot protect him from everything," she said, watching as Garrett patted the corners of their furniture for the third time. "I can try. He needs to explore to learn. A few bumps and bruises are part of growing up. I know, but that does not mean I have to like it." Hannah came up behind him and wrapped her arms around his waist. "You are a wonderful father, but you need to relax a little. Matthew is tough. Look at his parents." Garrett turned in her arms and kissed her. Even after 2 years, the spark between them had not dimmed. If anything, it had grown stronger, tempered by shared experiences and deepened by mutual respect. "How did I get so lucky?" he asked. "We both got lucky. We found each other when we needed each other most." In the fall of Matthew's second year, Hannah announced she was pregnant again. This time, the pregnancy was easier, with less morning sickness and more energy. The baby, another boy they named Thomas, arrived in late May, a quick labor that left both the doctor and Dorothy impressed. 2 boys, 2 years apart. Garrett could hardly believe his life sometimes. He had gone from a lone drifter to a husband and father of 2, from someone with no ties to someone whose ties were the most important thing in his world. As Thomas grew, the brothers developed a close bond. Matthew was protective of his little brother, always wanting to show him things, to include him in his play. Garrett and Hannah watched their sons with pride and joy, seeing their own love reflected in the relationship between the boys. Hannah opened her bakery in Amarillo when Thomas was 3. It was a small shop, but perfectly formed, with a display case for her goods and a few tables where people could sit and enjoy coffee with their pastries. She named it New Beginnings Bakery, and on opening day, Garrett stood beside her as they cut the ribbon, Matthew and Thomas beside them, all of them dressed in their finest clothes. The bakery was an immediate success. Hannah's reputation for quality had preceded her, and she had customers from the moment she opened the doors. She hired 2 women to help her, giving her time to still be with her boys in the afternoons and evenings. Life was good. Better than good. It was everything Garrett had never known he wanted. He woke each morning beside the woman he loved, worked a job he enjoyed, came home to sons who ran to greet him with shouts of "Papa" and sticky kisses. He had more than he had ever dreamed possible. One evening in summer, with the boys finally asleep after much protest, Garrett and Hannah sat on their front porch, watching the sun set over the prairie. Hannah leaned against him, comfortable and content. "You ever think about that day?" she asked. "When you found me by the river?" "Sometimes." "Do you?" "All the time. I think about how close I came to just walking into that river and not coming out, how I had given up completely. And then you appeared like something out of a dream and everything changed." Garrett held her closer. "I think about how different my life would be if I had taken a different route that day, if I had not heard you crying. The idea of not having you, not having the boys, it is unbearable. But you did hear me. You did stop. You did help me when you had no reason to. That says everything about who you are, Garrett. I got far more out of helping you than you got from accepting my help. You gave me a purpose, a reason to stop running. You gave me a home. We gave each other a home." They sat in comfortable silence, watching as the stars began to emerge. In the house behind them, they could hear Thomas stirring, probably having one of his frequent bad dreams. Before Garrett could move, Matthew's little voice came through the open window, soothing his brother back to sleep. "He is such a good big brother," Hannah said. "He learned from watching you. You are the most loving, giving person I know. I learned from you too. You taught me that it is okay to accept help, to lean on someone. Before you, I thought I had to do everything myself. We make a good team, the best team." In the fall, Samuel announced he was planning to retire in the next few years, which meant Garrett would be taking over most of the day-to-day operations of the ranch. It was a big responsibility, but Garrett felt ready for it. He had learned so much in the 5 years he had been at the Green Ranch, not just about horses and cattle, but about business, about leadership, about building something that would last. Hannah's bakery continued to thrive, becoming a fixture in Amarillo. People came not just for the baked goods, but for the warm atmosphere Hannah created, the sense of community. She knew all her regulars by name, asked after their families, made everyone feel welcome. The boys grew sturdy and strong, learning to ride almost as soon as they could walk. Garrett taught them about horses and cattle, while Hannah taught them to read and do figures. They were bright, curious children, full of questions about everything. When Matthew was 6 and Thomas 4, they added a daughter to their family. Elizabeth, named after Garrett's mother, arrived on a spring morning, making their family complete. She had Hannah's dark hair and Garrett's gray eyes, and both boys were instantly smitten with their baby sister. "She is so small," Matthew said wonderingly, looking down at Elizabeth in Hannah's arms. "You were that small once," Hannah told him. "Can I hold her?" Garrett helped Matthew get settled in a chair, then carefully placed Elizabeth in his arms, supporting her head. Matthew held his sister with utmost care, his face serious with the responsibility. "I will protect her always," he declared. "No one will ever hurt her." "I know you will," Garrett said, pride swelling in his chest. "You are a good brother." Thomas, not wanting to be left out, climbed up onto the chair with Matthew, peering down at his sister. "She is pretty," he announced. "I like her." Life with 3 children was chaotic but wonderful. Garrett and Hannah moved through their days in a choreographed dance born of years of partnership, each knowing instinctively what the other needed. They supported each other, laughed together, navigated the challenges of parenthood as a team. Samuel and Dorothy fully retired when Elizabeth was 2, moving into town but still visiting the ranch regularly. Garrett took over as sole owner of the Green Ranch, renaming it the Vale Ranch, though most people still called it by its old name out of habit. On their 10th wedding anniversary, Garrett surprised Hannah by taking her back to the spot where they had first met, the bend in the Pecos River where he had found her crying. They rode out together early one morning, leaving the children with Dorothy. When they reached the river, they dismounted and walked to the bank. The river was lower than it had been that day 10 years ago, but otherwise, everything was the same. The cottonwood trees still provided shade. The water still flowed sluggishly past. "I can still see you sitting right there," Garrett said, pointing to a spot on the bank. "Looking like your world had ended. It had ended. My old world anyway, but it was making room for a new one." Hannah turned to him. "I never properly thanked you, for that day, for what you said. You have thanked me every day for the past 10 years just by being you. Still, I want to say it. Thank you, Garrett. Thank you for stopping. Thank you for caring. Thank you for seeing something in me worth saving when I could not see it myself. There was always something worth saving. You just needed someone to remind you." Hannah kissed him, a kiss that held 10 years of love, of partnership, of building a life together. When they pulled apart, she smiled. "Remember what I said that day, that I had nothing left, and I said you had me. You were wrong, you know. I did have something left. I had hope buried deep down. I had strength I did not know I possessed. But you helped me find those things again. You helped me become who I was meant to be. We helped each other. That is what love does. It does not complete us. It helps us become more completely ourselves. They stayed at the river for another hour, talking about the past decade, about how far they had come. Then they rode back to the ranch, back to their children and their life, carrying with them the memory of where it all began. As the years passed, the Vale Ranch prospered. Garrett expanded the horse breeding program, developing a reputation for quality stock that brought buyers from all over Texas and beyond. The cattle operation remained steady and profitable. They hired more hands, built new barns, fenced in more pasture. Hannah's bakery also grew. She opened a second location in a neighboring town, then a third. She wrote a cookbook that sold surprisingly well, with all her favorite recipes and the stories behind them. She became known not just in Amarillo but throughout the region. Matthew grew into a serious, responsible young man who loved the ranch and wanted nothing more than to work alongside his father. Thomas was more adventurous, talking about seeing the world before he settled down. Elizabeth was bright and determined, insisting she would run the bakery someday, much to Hannah's delight. On their 20th wedding anniversary, their children threw them a party at the ranch. It seemed like the entire town of Amarillo turned out, a testament to the respect and affection people had for Garrett and Hannah. They had become pillars of the community, people others turned to for advice, for help, for inspiration. As Garrett looked around at the gathered crowd, at his grown children and their friends, at the ranch hands who had become like family, at the neighbors and townspeople who had shared in their life, he felt overwhelmed with gratitude. Hannah found him standing alone for a moment and slipped her hand into his. "What are you thinking about? About how none of this should exist. If I had ridden past that day, if you had walked into the river, if either of us had made different choices, none of this would be here. But you did not ride past. I did not walk into the river. We made the choices we made and they led us here. To this moment, to this life. No regrets, not a single one. You, only that I did not find you sooner." They danced that night, just as they had at their wedding, holding each other close as the music played. They were older now, with gray in their hair and lines around their eyes, but the way they looked at each other had not changed. The love was still there, as strong as ever, maybe stronger for having weathered 20 years of life together. Matthew took over more of the ranch operations as Garrett entered his 50s, allowing Garrett more time to spend with Elizabeth, who was still at home. He taught her to ride, to rope, all the skills he had taught her brothers. But he also sat with her while she read, listened to her dreams about the bakery, supported her ambitions just as he had supported Hannah's. Thomas left for a few years, traveling to California and back, working various jobs, seeing the world. But he came home eventually, admitting that nowhere else felt right. He joined the ranch operation, bringing fresh ideas and new energy that complemented Matthew's steadiness. Elizabeth took over the bakery when she was 22, with Hannah transitioning to an advisory role. It was hard for Hannah to step back, but she knew it was time. She had built something lasting, something that would continue beyond her. That was all anyone could ask. On a warm evening in late summer, when Garrett was 57 and Hannah 53, they sat on their porch just as they had countless times before. The ranch was quiet, the day's work done. Their children were grown and thriving. The business they had built was solid and successful. "You know what I realized today," Hannah said, her head on Garrett's shoulder. "What is that? We have been together now for far longer than I was with James. This life with you, it has become my whole life. Not my second chance, not my new beginning, just my life. Is that a good thing? The best thing. James was important, and I will always be grateful for the years we had. But you, Garrett, you are my soulmate. You are the one I was meant to find. I feel the same way. Like everything in my life before you was just preparation. Like I was waiting without knowing what I was waiting for. And then you found me. And then I found you, the best day of my life. They sat in comfortable silence, watching the sun set over the prairie they both loved. The land had been good to them, giving them a life beyond what either had dreamed possible. You remember what you said to me that first day? Hannah asked. When I said I had nothing left, I said you had me. And you were right. I had you, and it turned out that was everything. Garrett kissed the top of her head. You were always everything, Hannah. You just needed someone to see it. As the years continued to pass, they watched their children build their own families. Matthew married a local girl and had 3 children of his own. Thomas found love with a woman he met on one of his travels, and they settled on a piece of land adjacent to the ranch. Elizabeth married the son of another rancher, and they ran the bakery together. Garrett and Hannah became grandparents, then great-grandparents. They watched their family tree spread and branch, knowing that every person in it existed because they had both been brave enough to take a chance on each other on a hot day by the Pecos River. On their 50th wedding anniversary, the family threw another celebration. Garrett was 82 now, Hannah 78. They were both healthy and sharp, still living in the house Garrett had built all those years ago, still taking their evening walks when the weather permitted. At the party, Matthew stood up to make a toast. To my parents, he said, his voice thick with emotion. You have shown us what true love looks like. Not the easy kind, not the fairy tale kind, but the real kind. The kind that chooses each other every day. The kind that builds something lasting. The kind that creates a legacy of love that spans generations. Thank you for everything you have given us. Thank you for showing us how to live. Everyone raised their glasses, and Garrett looked at Hannah, seeing the tears in her eyes that matched his own. They had done it. They had built the life they had dreamed of and more. Late that night, after everyone had gone home, Garrett and Hannah sat together in their bedroom. The house was quiet around them, full of memories of the life they had shared. 50 years, Hannah said wonderingly. Can you believe it? Sometimes yes, sometimes no. Parts of it feel like yesterday. Other parts feel like they have always been. Do you ever wish you had done anything differently? Garrett considered this. I wish I had found you sooner, but otherwise, no. Every moment, good and bad, brought us here. To this place, this life. How could I wish any of it different? I feel the same way. Even the hard parts, the losses and the struggles, they all made us who we are. They made us appreciate what we have. They prepared for bed slowly, a ritual they had performed thousands of times. As they lay in the darkness, Garrett held Hannah close, feeling the familiar shape of her body against his. I love you, he said softly. More than the day I married you, more than yesterday, more than I thought it was possible to love another person. I love you too. Thank you for stopping by that river. Thank you for giving me a reason to go on. Thank you for 50 years of happiness. Thank you for taking my hand. Thank you for trusting me. Thank you for building this life with me. They fell asleep tangled together, just as they had done for 50 years, just as they would continue to do for whatever time they had left. Garrett passed away quietly in his sleep 2 years later at the age of 84. He went peacefully in the house he had built, surrounded by the family he had created. Hannah held his hand as he drew his last breath, whispering her love to him one final time. The grief was profound, but so too was the gratitude. Hannah had been given 52 years with this man, this beautiful, kind, steadfast man who had saved her life in every way that mattered. Not everyone got such a gift. She lived for another 4 years, staying active and involved with the family and the businesses until the very end. When she passed away at 82, it was quietly and peacefully in the same house, in the same bed where Garrett had died. Her children found her in the morning, a letter clutched in her hand. It was addressed to Garrett, written the night before she died, though whether she knew it was her time or it was simply coincidence, no one could say. The letter was simple and heartfelt. My dearest Garrett, I am coming to join you. Our time apart has been too long, though I know you wanted me to stay with the family as long as I could. I did as you wished, but now I am ready to be with you again. I am not afraid. How could I be afraid when I know you are waiting for me? You once said I had you when I thought I had nothing, and it turns out that was all I ever needed. I love you beyond measure, beyond time, beyond death. Wait for me, my love. I am coming home. They buried her beside Garrett in the family plot on the ranch, under a wide Texas sky. The entire town turned out for the funeral, a testament to the lives they had lived, the impact they had made. In the years that followed, the family kept both the ranch and the bakery running, honoring the legacy Garrett and Hannah had built. They told stories about their grandparents to their own children, keeping the memory alive. The story of how they met, how Garrett had found Hannah crying by the river and had offered her everything he had, became family legend. The original house where Garrett and Hannah had lived remained standing, carefully maintained by the family. It became a gathering place for reunions and celebrations, a physical reminder of where it all began. And sometimes, on quiet evenings, family members swore they could feel the presence of Garrett and Hannah there, still loving each other, still building their life together, their story continuing beyond the boundaries of life and death. Because that is what true love does. It endures. It persists. It creates ripples that spread outward through time, touching lives not yet lived, shaping futures not yet imagined. Garrett had found a woman crying by the river. She had said she had nothing left. He had said she had him. And from that simple exchange, from that moment of compassion and courage, a love story was born that would echo through generations, a testament to the power of choosing love even in the darkest moments, of seeing possibility where others saw only despair, of building something beautiful and lasting from the ashes of loss. Their story ended as all stories must, but the love they shared, the life they built, the family they created, all of it continued, proof that when you find the right person, when you choose to love fiercely and completely, you create something that transcends mortality. Garrett and Hannah Vale had lived and loved and built a legacy that would endure long after they were gone. All because on a hot day in 1878, a cowboy chose to stop when he heard a woman crying, and that woman chose to take his hand and believe in possibility one more time.